Hey guys, I'm back. I have not posted for a little while. If you can imagine, running a company is pretty hard work and it's very time consuming. However, I have been able to accrue some new footage and I've been working on some pretty cool projects. And as you can imagine, also, we are now in springtime, so getting ready for summer events as well as other projects around the world takes a lot of time. The North Lawndale Employment Network asked me to moderate an event for the launch of their sustainability white paper. I'm bringing you the unedited version of that talk. So I hope you enjoy.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to bring up David Jones, the CEO of Lumina Energy. He's our moderator for the second panel. The panel two is called by Black and Indigenous People of Color Leaders in Clean Energy Jobs. David Jones is a technologist, polymath, inventor, and CEO of Lumina Energy, a U.S.-based energy as a service software platform. David is a globally recognized industry leader in renewable energy and a pioneer in virtual power plant technology. He is a recipient of the 2019 Google Innovation Award. He currently serves as an entrepreneur in residence at University of Chicago. He received his MBA from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. With more than 20 years of experience as a technologist, he continues to innovate and push boundaries in his field and accelerate the adoption and proliferation of clean tech on a global level. Please get up for David Jones.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
I know that was a mouthful, everyone, but I do appreciate everyone coming. I thank Brenda and the team here at NLEN for extending the opportunity for me to moderate this platform, as well as to talk about what drives me, which is renewable energy, and obviously the colleagues I'll have on shortly. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a seat. I'm a big notes and data guy, as per my bio. Now, I love, by the way, what Naomi said earlier about Carl Sagan and the pale blue dot. So if you all are not familiar with what that story entailed, there was a satellite that was launched, I believe, in the 60s, 70s, somewhere around there, which basically traveled around 14 billion miles straight. And at the last second, the NASA space team, they turned it around so the satellite could view what the Earth looked like from 14 billion miles away. Now, what they saw was literally a pale blue dot, which represented all of our hopes, our dreams, our successes, our failures, everything that connects us, everything that separates us. And it was literally smaller than a marble. So, I mean, if you can imagine the longevity of human history, of the Earth itself, it really just brings this home as to why we're all here today. It's not about what divides us as opposed to what connects us. What is the connective thread for all of this? So just to give you a little bit of a reference point, I'm coming off of a red-eye flight. I drove rather. I was in Atlanta, Georgia last night. I got home at 4 o'clock in the morning. But the reason I was there was something that I thought was pretty dynamic. My son is part of the White Sox ace team. They were there for a major competition, which they won, first place. Yes. So fortunately, we did come home. We took the W. But as we were driving, we set up Google to sort of take the scenic route, if you will. And you know what I saw? I saw a lot of common folk with the exact same problems that we're here to resolve today and in the near future and for future civilizations. So let me tell you a little bit about my organization. Lumina Energy was started to become that connective thread for clean tech products. Now, everywhere in the world, we all face different challenges by either topographic things like, where you're, if you're an island or if you're in a cold climate or hot climate or whatever the case may be. The thing is, we're only going to continue to create little bitty, teeny weeny people that need to have a place that is sustainable for living, breathing, and making more little bitty, teeny weeny teeny people. So we've been able to successfully create software and implement solutions that connect all forms of renewable energy together, not just solar or wind, but basically all. And we are literally working on 5 continents right now to make that a vision. And most importantly, thank you. And most importantly, we are working heavily in the continent of Africa to ensure that they have energy sovereignty, especially in rural villages. I love, once again, Naomi, I love you so much. I mean, how long have we known each other? You know, years. I mean, she and I have been on the front line ensuring that people of color and predominantly Black people can create energy sovereignty not only in America but abroad. And until we get to a place where we are able to mitigate what we put inside of our bodies and the types of foundations that create our society, we will never, ever be able to thrive as a people. So I'm really grateful, by the way, Selma and a couple of other colleagues in the room. If you don't mind, if you are an advisor or a friend or a colleague of mine, please raise your hand. Yeah, so quite a few people. We've all been working heavily together on multiple projects to ensure that people of color, starting in the Chicagoland area, will have equal rights, will have access to job training. I don't want to deviate too much, and I know we're running short on time, so just give me the cutoff sign if you need it. So one thing that we did notice, because we also have a training academy which has successfully trained, hired, and put around several hundred solar workers into the workforce throughout the United States, is there's simply not enough people of color. There also, more importantly, is not a concerted effort in Illinois to make an impact. I think, I really love, by the way, what Brenda has created. So it's unfortunate that we have created siloed efforts to make, I guess, changes within our communities, but we are all part of one big organism. And unless that organism learns how to get along and share collective wisdom and to create better opportunities, that's never going to happen on a big scale. So I think the underlying theme today, what I gleaned at least from the last panelists that were up, is what is the connective thread that binds us? You know, the last panelists, they were talking a lot about kind of agriculture. I don't know if you all are familiar with what's called the mycelial network, but the mycelial network is millions of years ahead in innovation as far as what is happening underneath the ground. This is basically the AT&T, like, you know, one plant communicates with another, communicates with fungus and other forms to share data, to share trauma even. You know, like if a tree gets cut down 20 miles away, another tree already knows that happens. That's what we need to create. We need to create a dynamic system in order to respond better to external and internal stimuli. So a lot of what my organization has done, and by the way, I'm a little salty that we were not in the white paper, but it's okay. We'll be in the next one. Next year. No, but we have been instrumental in creating and recording data across the United States and North America as a whole, analyzing that data and then utilizing that data to create complex solutions to problems that have plagued us for a very long time. So we actually did release an energy data report, which is, by the way, the first Black-owned virtual power plant energy data report ever. Yay! Yeah. So one of the things that we really need to learn to mitigate is the amount of lobbyists that are stifling the progress of clean energy. And I mean, if you've ever seen Who Killed the Electric Car, it's not killed, it's more limping. And if you notice, like there's a lot of that same energy that deals with solar, with wind and so forth that has existed, you know, for 50, 60 years, but in a very short amount of time. Organizations like ours, like Blacks in Green, In Tandem Workforce, Gardeneers and so forth have made it possible that we can come together as a society and make something great for future civilizations. So I'll just, before I get to my my panelists by introducing their great bios, I'll just say that we need to learn to fix the problems that our ancestors faced. And just because something works does not mean that it cannot be improved. Okay? All right, so my first panelist is Sherlandra Books. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. I'm not sure where you are, so I don't know where to look. Oh, there you are. She has an extensive bio, so if you'll bear with me, I'll try to get through it. It's literally an entire page long. Thank you. So Sherlandra Brooks is the Associate Director of Workforce and Contractor Development at Elevate, a nonprofit organization that designs and implements programs that reduce costs, protect people and the environment, and ensure the benefits of clean and efficient energy use reach those and delivery of the workforce and contractor development programs, leveraging her 20 years of experience creating equitable and inclusive programs that support residents in under-resourced communities. Sherlandra works closely with Elevate's workforce and contractor development team to build and cultivate partnerships with organizations in under-resourced communities, creating access to solar training that leads to employment opportunities with family-sustaining wages. Awesome. In addition to building partnerships, she also provides input on program market and community engagement materials to advertise program services and participant engagement highlights. There's quite a bit, so in the sake of time, she's amazing. So if I can welcome you up, please.
Just a little bit.
Is there another mic, or are we just using this one? Okay, cool. Alrighty. My coworker, Shelly Williams, CEO of In Tandem Workforce. Shelly is an innovative workforce development expert with a unique specialization in the clean energy industry. With a diverse background in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy, Shelly Williams is dedicated to sourcing and cultivating talent to promote career advancement within the green economy. As a passionate social justice advocate, Shelly is committed to championing the cause of justice-involved population and other marginalized groups who often lack representation in the workforce. This commitment extends beyond mere rhetoric to actionable initiatives, ensuring that underrepresented individuals have access to equal opportunities within the clean energy sector. Please welcome. And just as a side note, Shelly and I have worked together for many years, so everything on that resume is true. And I believe I do also have the honor of having on the panel the author of the white paper. Wow, this is awesome. So Dr. Elisha Hall, I will read through your bio as well. Elisha is he's the Director of Social Enterprise, Green Sustainable Programming, and Community Engagement for the North Lawndale Employment Network. Elisha is community educator and village builder. Elisha restores African healing legacies that have always accompanied African resistance and self-determination. He is the founder of the African and Indigenous Knowledge Institute, AIKI, a local bridge that develops institutions through interactive educational platforms and individualized diversity and inclusion support. In 2018, he established the Respiro Profundo, oh, you speak Spanish now, or deep breathing program for pre-K students at Chicago Commons, a program that continued to operate virtually even during the pandemic. In 2016, he worked with members of Inglewood and the broader Chicago community to establish the Ujamaa Community Land Trust. Elisha received his PhD in policy studies in urban education at the University of Illinois, Chicago. I wasn't done yet, but yeah, impressive enough. All right, please welcome. All right, so let's get to the questions. And if you don't mind, I thought we could also just kind of turn this into more of a conversation instead of just reading off of a script. So we will start with what brought you to this work? How did you become concerned about clean energy and green jobs? So we can start with Dr. Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I'm thinking about this question. Of course, I created the question. you know, I have to go back for me to a phenomenal family here in the Chicagoland area, which is the Black Oaks Sustainable Renewable Living Center for Sustainable Renewable Living out in Pembroke, Illinois. And raise your hand if anyone's been to Black Oaks, just in this space right here. Okay. So Black Oaks, if you don't know, is home to Fred Carter and Dr. Jafuza Wright Carter. And that couple has essentially been helping to, educate and helping to lift people into conservation, environmental justice, and, growing food for the last 20, 30 years. They have a 40-acre space out in Pembroke. Pembroke is the home, it's the last stop on the Underground Railroad before Chicago. And so you got a lot of Black folks there. It's also the poorest township in the country. Wow. 10 years ago, yes. And also Pembroke and Kankakee home to the largest amount of Black farmers in the Midwest. Okay, so you can imagine going to this place and there's 40 acres and you're just staying on this land. Meanwhile, Pembroke is unincorporated. There's no police department. There's no governing body. And this farm that they have is literally running off the grid. It is there's one individual who installed the solar panels on that property, and that is, I will say, Barbara, we could just wave. And we happen to have him as our instructor with Elevate, teaching our participants how to install solar. So if you want to talk about full circle, there it is right there. So that's really what got my start. I was actually their first employee, and the rest is history.
Awesome.
Well, for me, it's true to say that my grandmother, working with my grandmother in our backyard garden, she was my mentor, a child of the 30s, and she was the type of person that was just good at everything. She was classy. She can make a dress, then go out to a party that day, the same day after work. And she was the only person I know that knew when she did leave us. She didn't owe anybody anything. She didn't have one single bill I know because she and I lived together. So I get choked up talking about it, but she was all of that. But it's but more recently, working at Growing Home in the workforce development department, I was just so pleased to be in that space working with the reentry population. I think such transformative work there. We had an evidence-based curriculum where we were with actually healing individuals and addressing childhood traumas and all that stuff. But every chance I got, I went into the hoop house to get dirty because I have a extensive background in violence prevention. I'm sure just involved in it. So I spent 15 years in prison. So coming back to Inglewood, and I'm old enough to remember when Inglewood was beautiful. Was beautiful. And, I fell into the trap of the 80s drug trade, and it was alluring, the money and everything. So when I came back home, I said, I have to correct this thing. So I was installed as the director of violence prevention for Ceasefire, who saw violence as a epidemic, treating it like a disease. And I said, wow, this public health model is dope, but nobody is talking about the contagion of pollution and how the environmental factors are affecting the youth, the exposure to lead, and everything that the panel is talking about. So I started in tandem workforce organization to really create that intersection between violence prevention and environmental, or restorative justice and environmental justice. So it was the only organization that I knew that was really focusing on that, combining my talents in workforce development and violence prevention. And I'm here today in front of you good people. Shout out to all the previous panel. Make some noise for Dr. Hall's jacket. I didn't get the memo. All right.
Not the jacket. Well, I am Shalandra Brooks, and part of my journey is that I am the kid of a cosmetologist and a third generation carpenter who migrated from the South during the Great Migration to Bronzeville. So I'll pause there because we can talk a little bit about that later and spare you guys on some of that. But I've worked in workforce and development for about this year's 21 years, and I've worked across multiple sectors: healthcare, manufacturing, IT, all of them, ins and outs, OJT, transitional jobs, CHA transitional jobs, the Mayor's Office of Workforce and Development. Well, we did an initiative that was for parolees. So I've worked across multiple sectors, and so clean energy was never on my radar in terms of training. I knew it was there. So I ended up kind of like, I worked for an organization who had an office in Detroit. And one of the things that the mayor kind of stood up and said is like, and I want you guys to give a round of applause because we got half of the city lit. And so in my mind, I'm like, half of the city lit, not understanding that that was like scary. Those are things that folks are like, I get emotional. These panels get me emotional, get me worked up.
Let me know.
But it was just crazy how folks were really living in like dark environments, and there was no real lighting. And then Flint came along, and then the water crisis, and then we actually, my coworker said, Shalandra, we can take you into the city. And she asked me, was I scared? I was like, why would I be scared? Just like you're here, let's talk about it. And it just as they said, half of the city was deserted, and it was dark, and it was just no life. So Detroit kind of like put things on the map for me. And then one day I kind of like shift gears a little bit. So I had done a lot of direct services and just like building programs from the ground up. And then I just made a little bit of a shift because I said, I don't know if one of the biggest things, and I think we all know that this is a theme, is education, educating the communities. So I said, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So I shift gears and spent 5 years in policy, because I wanted to make sure that what was happening at the ground level made the connection back to the folks who were actually, just kind of putting things in place. And I also wanted to just kind of bring my lived experience into the space as well. And in 5 years in policy, running consortiums and things of that nature, and again, implementing programs that really kind of spoke to the ecosystem. So I'm not just thinking about we obviously know that one person working in a household changes the entire family dynamic. But I was really thinking about when we go into these organizations and businesses now, how are we really taking care of the front office, the back office, the field? How are we feeding that ecosystem? If you have a business, how are we making sure the person who's, handling your books is a certified accountant? So I spent 5 years there in that space. And I think that was for the first time that I realized that I was like a person of color. And I say that because I had never worked where everyone looked like me, so I never thought it was an issue. But then it was an issue when I worked somewhere where folks were not used to working with folks that look like me. And so I was saying, okay, well, and I'll be honest, in this space, there were nights I had hard nights in that space, because I'm taking home things that I know I shouldn't be taking home, and I'm getting these experiences, later in my career. These are not early experience. These are later. So I'm like, okay, this is something. But spending time in that space, I did kind of made the transition over to Elevate, because something about that clean energy kept coming back to me. Healthy homes, working with individuals who were sick in their own homes because something's not clean. And from that point on, I said, I need to incorporate what I know about programming, what I know about executing, what I know how to do best. And that's listening to the express needs of individuals, like the solar training program that we have going here, and refining it. So I'll pull up there, but I also want the trainees to know that everything that you all say and you give feedback and you survey things, we take all of that and we go back to the table and we refine our programs. So
Can I just cut in for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I love what you just said about being able to go into a community and you are from that community and being able to propagate this message of sharing these new ideologies, and oftentimes it becomes very difficult to uh, share this image of the future if the majority of the people are just worrying about how they're going to put food on the table tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the idea that you were appointed to this role, I think, speaks to the level of credibility that Elevate has, and furthermore, the narrative that is being pushed in Illinois specifically. Because I mean, I've traveled around the United States working on projects, and it's not like that in other places. One of my colleagues in the back is from Louisiana, and I can guarantee you, they don't have this program. They need it, but many of them will turn their noses up at it just because of either lobbyism or because of this perceived level of everything is safe and we're not going to go anyplace. So we have to just keep running the course.
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome that you're doing that.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, we're listening to those expressed needs. So it's super important for the individuals who are in it right now to give that feedback, because that's how we refine. And the reason the program looks the way that it looks is because we took those express needs and kind of like incorporated those into our programming. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, and this kind of leads into my next question, but one of the biggest issues that, without a doubt, every person up here has faced is the amount of pitfalls that exist as a person of color trying to either break into clean tech or anything that's not service-based, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the pitfalls that you all, and let's keep a bulleted list very short, some of the pitfalls that you all have dealt with and in becoming the role that you carry today?
I think for me, it's like constantly having to do more to be considered an expert, even with my years of experience and with my educational background, having to do more. And I can also align that back to community education. Like, again, I keep saying that, and that's a common thing in the room. Folks don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Folks don't know what is electrification,
Mm-hmm.
So I think about those things, and I think that, again, for me, it's more of I'm okay to do more,
Mm-hmm.
because I can also see the fruits of it when I look at the students, when I look at how programming grows. But I also think that being in the room and being the trusted expert is consistently a challenge.
I think it also helps that you probably have a trunk full of hats that you wear on a daily basis in your car.
Absolutely. And then not, it's respected, but you don't know it's respected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's pass it down.
For me, I think it was obviously the injustice involved. A good thing that I have a great support system. So, my social universe really just wrap their arms around me. But I'm very aware of the implicit bias that happens with people who've been formerly incarcerated. So I'm the big on that. I'm the one that's saying, hey, let's get you trained up. What is the thing that you're most passionate about? Obviously a concentration is on renewable energy, because I think it all just really just starts there, from me being in the backyard with grandma to really just learning transferable skills. So just implicit bias, to your point, to your question, and also being justice involved, and dealing with a population that just really just don't know their word. They don't understand that they are kings, and queens, and I'm saying to them, for them, I'm a success story. I own property. I came up, and they like, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. I was a high-ranking member of a Poplar Street organization, and now I'm just using that celebrity of this subculture, celebrity of the wheel, to say, well, this is it. Ain't nothing, gonna be ain't nothing on the street. Sharecropping is what's happening. That's what my mother used to call selling drugs. She was like, that's sharecropping what y'all doing. Mama, we make money out here, but she was right ultimately. She was right ultimately. I mean, when I look and see the depth and the destruction, that same community that I thought was beautiful, crack cocaine, wiped us out. Right? I mean, we still feeling the effects of that today. So we built the brothers, we built them up in Stateville Correctional Center, we built them up in Pontiac. And I said, man, when I touched down, and the first thing they asked me when I came home, because they know I know certain people, so they're like, well, man, you about to put us on meat, and you gonna flood us with the product, right? So they say, well, what you gonna do? I say, man, we need to clean up the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Because the joint is more manicured than the blocks. The joint is manicured. Right. I'm like, man, y'all okay with living in this field? Then we start building up the youth and then taking them out to downtown Chicago and doing all these other things. And I noticed that they don't drop paper in nice neighborhoods, neighborhoods that take pride in the beautification of their area, the aesthetics. And I'm like, why is it okay for you? So I'm doing my own kind of like observational studies. So I say, well, all right, one of the panelists said, kind of alluded to it earlier, because I didn't have formal education as an EJ, I went back to school. I went back to school and studied environmental science.
That's awesome.
You know, so with that, I can really be the message I bring and take those training modules, bring them to in tandem workforce, and then begin an orientation around environmental literacy. So again, we can connect to David and Lumina Energy so they can learn more advanced technical skills in the space. So I think that answers.
Yeah, no, that does. Yeah. But it also speaks to the narrative of becoming the change that you want to see in the world. And the idea that you acknowledge you made some hard mistakes, you paid for it, and now you're saying, I want to make the world a better place so future generations do not have to sharecrop.
I appreciate the question, and as a healer, you know, for me, it's so important to be about the business of healing, and bring that into my space. Unfortunately, we all know this. These organizations, corporate, etc., is almost it's like healing and does not go in that space, right? It's like they can be very fast paced, they can be very stressed, and very anxious, driven, you know, and so I've been conflicted at times trying to be a healer in these spaces, which has been a deep challenge because I am about the plant. I do use plant-based medicine, you know, I do grow food, all of that. So, you know, it's like in order for you not, you know, I was saying earlier, like how many of you all are living in your happy place, right? Or at peace, right? Or you feel, you know, where your soul is at peace. And it's hard to be that in a lot of these organizations. And so I will say that when I got here to North Lawndale Employment Network, and I learned that for my job, I was going to be taking care of bees. I was like, what? This is real? It was stressful. It was a game changer because it allowed me to bring my healing work into my space because bees are all about healing naturally. It's one of the healthiest professions that there is. I just want to acknowledge our beekeeper, Christian, who is here. He comes from a family of beekeepers. He's too shy to get up here, but he's a remarkable person, human being, and beekeeper. Has taught me so much about bees. And in the first place I learned beekeeping was actually Black Oaks, like I mentioned earlier. So, you know, for me, there's a huge responsibility that we find ways to bring healing into these spaces in every way that we can, especially as we talk about clean energy jobs, and because when attached to clean energy jobs is a conversation about climate change and climate action and global warming. And when you have those conversations, you better involve some healing because those conversations can lead very easily to some very hard conversations.
Absolutely.
Especially when you look at the fact that around the world, it's people of color, it's African and indigenous people that are experiencing the worst impacts and effects of climate change and often have the least amount of contributing to it because they have the least resources, global resources. So when we're talking about this, it's so important for us to understand how we are going to support our people, especially around mental health, right? So that we can show them, yes, we need to build out the future, but we also need to take care of ourselves as well.
Awesome. Thank you. That actually brings me to another point, and I love what one of the earlier panelists said. We mentioned about brown spots, and we mentioned about how people have come into either our communities or the global community and have pillaged our resources. And I'm specifically talking about the global community. Now, one of the issues that I think is not brought up, not even remotely enough, is climate reparations. So this concept of, someone mentioned like Uganda and where semiconductor material is removed to place in batteries and so forth. Now, most people don't realize that the local population in these areas that are affected, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, the people that are harvesting these materials, they're not dressed in PPE, they're dressed in t-shirts and sandals. They're breathing this stuff in. Many of the women are carrying babies on their backs while they're doing it, and there are all sorts of long-term degenerative effects around that. I believe a lot of that same issues are happening around America. I mean, if you look at fracking, right? If you look at what's happening in Texas and other oil-rich states, the exact same things are happening where you have leaching and oil runoff, and people are drinking this crap. So my question is, what do you all think we can do in the next 10 years to mitigate those issues? Hard question, I know. Take your time.
Man, I'm so happy you asked that question.
It's your question.
I didn't ask that. Maybe that's it.
I'm just kidding.
I think it's such an important question because when we're talking about conservation and sustainability and clean energy jobs, we're talking about sustainability. But if you're extracting from a source that is not yours, and that is, and instead of pressing the people on the ground and paying them pennies on the dollar to do so, it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, that means that we need to come up with more sustainable technologies that are produced at a what I would call a local kind of level. So you need to be making sustainable technologies that come from where you are, right? That don't filter, that don't destroy the earth, that are putting back and finding ways to do that.
And also giving back to the community is incredibly important.
Exactly. So that would also mean that the technologies that we're coming up with would be different on the continent than we would see here because they have different resources to pull from. They're using bamboo, right, and all these other things. And Mexico, they're using avocado seeds. That's part of the silverware is made out of avocado seeds that you all have from Lincoln Park too. Bioplastics. So you have to know how to use what's local and we can't even get there because we're depending on China for the solar panels, right? And et cetera. So I think this is such an important conversation, and what it starts to do is help to force us into creating the businesses that we need to create the technology that we don't have.
Well, in tandem, the little part that we do is we include the OSHA 40-hour hazard training, so individuals can be able to identify potential hazards. They can be prepared using the appropriate PPE so they can address those overall hazards that we come in contact with. So overall, our approach is education. So, they can become aware, conscious. I mean, you don't know carbon monoxide is in space, or, we teach around the overall safety and precaution.
And Elevate, one of the things that we do is really important as part of our mission is that we live while we climb. So I think one of the things that I keep saying is that, like, going to be a common theme is educating communities. Communities do not know what electrification is. They don't know about retrofitting homes. They don't know that the savings are not going to happen next month, that they happen over time. So it's important for folks to understand they're going to get two bills, light and a gas bill. So I'm taking everything back to the community education components because you can't do anything and just continue to train up folks, give folks jobs if you are not saying to someone, we're building a knowledge capacity of community-based organizations so that they're able to build a knowledge capacity of participants so that those participants go back and take that knowledge and they're sharing that back out to their communities. You cannot do anything without the community education component. You have to educate communities. I don't care how many jobs you have Seizure just saying, hey, look, we got millions of dollars that are going to hit the ground. Seizure is still right now in the process of trying to figure out who are they going to award those dollars to. We have to keep going because the work has to continue. So what we're saying to Seizure is that there's still a need, but we got to keep going without you right now. Right. So for me, it's always going to be community education. It's always going to be how are we sharing out to folks what's happening? Because if I'm verifying a participant's check on a Friday and the lady who's verifying the check at the currency is saying, hey, I'm going to send my son to you. How do I get my son to you? That lets me know we have not done something. Like, how are we tackling things? So I think to your question around the next 10 years, we need to really focus on that community, that people education, I should say, of what we're doing. Because in 10 years, we install solar panels all the time. We do these trainings all the time. I can tell you right now, half of the people who actually take this, and this is to some of the students in the room, they don't actually work in installing solar panels. They do design, they do sales, they do construction, they're instructors, they go into energy efficiency. There is so much that they go into. So solar is just a foundational component of the work. You have to think about the advanced training, the multiple entry and exit points. Shalondra, I got 6 months here, but I'll see you in another 6 months. If you're not educating folks, it's nothing. It's all fruitless. So over the next 10 years, we need to combine more of that community education and outreach with simultaneously training folks up. Because I'm always thinking about what's the next step. What are the students saying? How are we immediately attaching folks to employment opportunities with family sustaining wages? We are in a very different climate right now. And without those pieces and ramping up that community education, in 10 years, I can tell you, I've been in this game a long time. It shifts. They say healthcare, we got millions of dollars. Everybody runs to healthcare, right? They follow. They say, oh, IT, everybody go run to like IT. And then we forget what we do. Mm-hmm. And it goes nowhere. So I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, absolutely. Community education, people education.
That's right. Okay. All right, so let's wrap this up. I will say that, Shalondra, thank you. The feedback loop is so absolutely critical. I love Afrobeat music.
That is critical.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. But no, the feedback loop is absolutely critical when implementing large-scale systems, because you can't just force feed someone something and say, this is what you need, as opposed to, this is what can help you, and let's make a concerted effort to design the system together. Yep. In my company, we've run into this situation, for instance, in Washington State, where a lot of organizations were like, let's push solar, but do you realize that it rains, 6 days out of the week there? What good is solar going to do? Yeah. So that speaks to a much larger narrative of ensuring that you equip the community first with the knowledge and the info to make a decision, and then you implement a system and create like a beta program and so forth, test those theories, and then roll it out on a much larger scale. Okay, so it looks like we are short on time, so I want to just give a quick thank you to my panelists, and then we can open the floor for a couple of questions. This is the time of applause. Are there any burning questions that that anyone wants to ask? Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question. I do have a comment for this. I agree. So I'm a nutritionist is my background, and so I work with families and children. So we work with daycares, and it makes no sense to approach the children and we haven't talked to the parents. So the children we can do all we can for these children, and they go right back home to the same environment. And so I think it makes perfect sense. Community is so necessary, and so that's a very, very good point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no other, oh, there's one. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's been very informative and got my head around all of the topics. A lot of great work. I'm curious about specifically the clean energy jobs, sustainability, and economics. Are you finding success in getting customers and implementing solar systems and the larger systems that you're referring to? Are you getting an ROI?
I think that when you think of sustainability of jobs, what we saw during the pandemic and what we saw during the pandemic is folks saying, oh, we only need somebody for 2 projects. So now you're like getting someone out there, they're doing 40-hour plus work weeks, and then for them to come back to us a month later and say, oh, I'm no longer working. So we think about we vet our employers for these programs.
So the jobs are there.
The jobs are definitely there, and they're there in multiple ways. And then there's advanced career pathways, like where folks can walk out of this training and walk away with 6 credentials, but then go on to become an energy efficiency technician. So we are still honestly figuring out what is that clean energy career pathway? What is that advanced pathway? And so I know I work closely with Sys Energy Eco Solutions, and I've been talking to Senor Adore, and I said, you tell me, I need you to inform me so that I know when I'm going out here and I'm speaking to a funder or I'm implementing programs that I can say, hey, look, this is a great next step and it's doable. Because often they just get these things and they come to me and they have 6 certifications, it's red flag. You haven't used anything? So now we're just like, we need to be more intentional about what we're offering up to folks and listening again to those expressed needs. So we're seeing that. Advanced career pathways, I can see a lot in this space, but then also thinking about the family sustaining wages. So I'm also just really interested in, again, employers are informing the ecosystem. What's next? What should we be doing because we have money to do this? So I hope that answered part of it. I know I kind of grasped sustainability of those jobs and
Well, that's the education. I was wondering if you're implementing the systems and that your business is actually installing sustainable solutions in.
That's correct, yes. Yeah, so there's basically 2 ways to address that question. When you refer to an ROI, you have basically what's called an energy ROI, where the consumer themselves, they receive, the system eventually pays for itself over a 25-year period. Now, usually that vested interest starts at about the 5-year mark. So yeah, I mean, in terms of what we're doing, we're also in the business of what's called demand response. And I don't know how much time we have left, so I'm going to wrap this up. We work predominantly in what's called demand response, where areas such as Harvey, Illinois, which have constant blackouts and brownouts and so forth, we sell energy directly to what's called a grid system, a grid infrastructure, and we can sell that at a premium. So in that respect, we are able to create a massive ROI on our end as well as for the consumer. So Normally, like, you know, it's like 3 or 4 cents per kilowatt hour in Illinois, but we can charge up to $1. I probably shouldn't be telling people that, but so yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so this basically concludes session 2. I do want to, if you can give your hand to my panelists one more time, you all did an amazing job. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Holt.